we are going to be talking about the killings in Plateau State. The Special Task Force military operation Safe Haven has arrested and paraded 3 suspects in connection with the latest killings in Plateau State.
That's right, and the 3 men were arrested at Gashish district in the Barkin-Ladi local government area of Plateau. The suspects were paraded in Jos alongside 14 others who were arrested over the killings in which suspected herdsmen massacred more than 86 people, and mainly locals and farmers, on June the 24th.
Meanwhile, hundreds of protesters stormed the Plateau State Governor's house on Wednesday, accusing the governor, Simon Lalong, of failing in his duties.
The protesters, comprising of the youth group of the Christian Association of Nigeria, CAN, and women groups, condemned the recent attack in the state. And chairman of the youth group of CAN in the state, Marcus Kanda, said the governor must intensify efforts to resolve the crisis.
All right, let's now bring in security expert, Mr. Deinde Ario, security expert, is here in the studio with us. Thank you very much indeed for coming.
Thanks for joining us. Also in our Abuja studio is Benro Olajuigbe. He's the executive director, emergency and risk alert. Good morning and thanks for joining us. Okay.
All right, let's begin with you here in the studio. Well, Nigerians have been in shock, really, over these killings. Quite a number of figures, thrown, thrown in the air, 80-something, 100,
200.
and eyewitnesses are saying more than 200. Now, there are reports that the president would rejig the security apparatus. Is there a sense in which you agree that that should be done as well?
Well, let's go back to the origin of all of these killings, because they are planked on 3 platforms: the political, religious, and of course, the historical. Now, you remember in 2012, this is the same realm, the same Barkin-Ladi local government area. People were murdered, 50 were declared by government then, and Senator Gyang Dantong and other people, including Gyang Fulani, a member of the major speaker of the House of Assembly in Plateau State, they went for the burial. Gunmen invaded the burial event and killed those people, among others. Shortly thereafter, 50 other people were discovered to have been set ablaze while taking refuge with a pastor in the same place. This was 2012. It was in the same vein. Government came out with the usual rhetorics. We will leave no stone unturned, we will arrest, we will punish, and we will do all of this. If those things were done then, why do we have to have the Sunday experience? Again, the issue of figures is annoying. Those who are on ground, the residents who lost fathers, mothers, children, wives and husbands, they were saying that they've counted over 200 bodies. And government is saying 80. Is it important?
What is important is that we have lost lives.
1, then 2, what serious action now, affirmative action, will be done to forestall future occurrence? My problem basically is the fact that the president of the country, his loyalty is divided. And I say this with every seriousness. Wow. You and I heard the Miyetti Allah man saying that the killing was a reprisal attack. That's admitting that they were responsible for the killing. Several hours, several days after, the man is on the street, walking free. You see, the same way that he is our president, is the grand patron of Miyetti Allah. And if you know him very well, when he's committed to a cause, he's committed to it absolutely. You remember while he was awarding MK Abiola with the grandmother of Reverend Nigeria, he was on the other side praising Abacha, who was Abiola's chief tormentor. These things will not work. Let them change whoever for how many times is not the way to go.
Okay.
If you remove the head of the...
Let me bring in other guests in the studio there in Abuja, Benro Olajuigbe. First off, I'd like to get your impressions about this.
We're told, we're still having difficulties connecting
with them. All right. Okay, then I'll allow you to make that point you were trying to then.
Yes. Where was I?
Okay. Well, you made a point that there's no amount of redeployment
exactly right.
or
so even if they
rejigging
remove
of the security apparatus,
the individual heads of the various security organizations, is it not the same backroom structure with which they have worked and failed that the new henchmen or herdsmen will still work with?
So they're not going to come from outside.
They're not going to come from space or from outside of any new army, navy, or air force or police.
But those who argue for the rejigging of the security architecture say, look, there's a need for the old hands who seem not to have any more ideas to give room for fresh people they may be within the system, but because it is not their responsibility, the buck does not stop on their desk in the first place. But you see,
in this removing and removal and all of that, you must always recognize the role of experience. These people didn't become head for doing nothing. They got there for a purpose. I mean, having achieved some milestone. If you just remove them, how are we sure that the people you are putting in place, they have what it takes in terms of capacity, competence, and experience to take charge?
Very good question. I believe we have the Executive Director, Emergency and Risk Alert, Benro Olajuigbe, back on the line with us. Confirm that you can hear us. Fantastic. He is there. Mr. Dende Ariyo, our guest in the studio, has said, look, there's no amount of rejigging within the security apparatus that can make much difference, because after all, the fresh hands that you're going to bring on board will emanate or come from the same system. What's your take? I'm not too sure, Mr. Olajuigbe. Okay.
I don't know if they're hearing me, but I can't.
We really, truly are having problems with Mr. Olajuigbe hearing us.
All right, let's continue with Mr. Ariyo here.
So if we go back to my line of thought, I told you that the history of Fulani attacks has 3 platforms.
Yes.
The historical, the religious, and then the political.
Let's explore the angles that you are looking at it from.
Thank
the political, the religious, and of course the historical. Yes.
The Fulanis originally came from Futajalon in Guinea. And then they came into Africa, came into Nigeria via the northern part of Nigeria, fought wars, and established the caliphate in Sokoto.
Yes.
This is not a secret, it's an open thing. Now, that done, they now used the instrumentality of religion to cow the people and then get them to surrender to their political authority. And you have heard it before, that the Fulani man sees himself as a natural leader born to rule wherever they may find themselves. Okay? That being so, those who said history was removed from our educational system, so people will forget those past. They are not any wrong. Now, because what was projected then that it will happen is already happening. I had to quote Nnamdi Kanu of IPOB, now banned, because he said in 2014 that a time will come when the Fulanis will invade the entire Nigeria and put everybody under their authority. I will not get in there. As I said, if they change...
Is that really what is at the core of
because
this? Or is it more economical and more an issue of survival? Is that narrative not what is even fanning the embers of this hatred that we...
survivor,
yes.
Are they the only ones entitled to survive? The natives that were pure farmers who were planting things, don't they have the right to plant and harvest? But you see, they need land to graze their cattle. And so whoever finds himself or whoever owns a farm that's along their route will always carry the can, which again doesn't add up. That's why I said you can change head of service or head of those organizations,
yes, security chiefs,
as much as you like. If they don't address the fundamentals of letting people know that they are not the only one that have access to the instrumentation of violence, this will continue.
Well, to further lengthen the points that you try to make now, the leadership which rests with the governor of the state, the protesters yesterday did say, look, you are not living up to your responsibility. Do you also agree with that?
May I ask you, what authority does the governor have over any of the security agencies or operators?
But they have security votes.
Excuse me.
They have funding to provide security, to ensure security for people within their domain. Yes.
The law says the governor is the chief executive officer of the state. Here is a governor that has no control over the security, the policemen taking charge of his own safety and security.
But if it does not have the power
yes.
over the security agencies, if you like, you remember we had troubles in some areas, like in Oshun, is it Oshun, where you had Ife Modakeke
crisis.
And then how were they able to quell? Because isn't this the same thing that is happening over there?
I'm not going to compare Ife Modakeke with this case. Okay, there are two different things entirely. Now, as I was saying before, the governor is himself incapacitated, he's handicapped. He has no authority, he has no army, he has no air force, he has no navy at his disposal. Even the police that keeps watch over him, they take orders from Abuja.
Well, that has been the argument till date. But the stakeholders who are saying that he's not doing enough to actually be in tandem or have some kind of interface, the right kind of interface with the security apparatus on ground. They are the ones, the stakeholders are the ones on ground, so they know what they're talking about. But let me bring in Mr. Olajuigbe, Gbenro Olajuigbe. He's a security consultant himself. We've been trying to reconnect with him. Please confirm that you can hear us loud and clear now.
Yeah, it's better.
Fantastic. Let me take it from Mr. Dende Ariyo's view that there are political, religious, and historical dimensions to this. Of course, what's your view about what is really at the core of this herdsmen farmers clashes, not only in Plateau State, in Benue, in Taraba, in Nasarawa, almost everywhere?
Let me quickly state that when you allow conflict to fester for a very long time, it begins to mutate and it begins to assume several dimensions. Of course, that is why people are looking at elephants in different angles right now and every other thing. But let me state that the conflict between elders and farmers is historical conflict. Historical in the sense that it's not a recent phenomenon. It started several years ago. But over the years, we have allowed them to fester. Our approach to managing the conflict has been pacifist rather than being transformist in nature. We never get to the root cause of the crisis. Let me equally state here that every conflict has the foundation of economy in it. The relationship between the farmer and the herders has been that of economy, competition for resources. Farmers they care for their crops. They want their crops to yield results for them. At the same time, herders cares about their animals. And the conflict is that the herders have to feed on the farms, which is dangerous to the interest of the farmers. And what we should look at, but over the years, it assumes several dimensions. Even though the foundation is economy, now it's being driven by values of religion, values of ethnicities, and even political values. So it can be said that those who are doing several analyses are right, but they are equally wrong, especially when you are focusing on on action that should be taken.
Yeah.
But one thing I will emphasize right now is that the federal government has not been up and doing in tackling the problem between the elders and the farmers. And let me quickly state here, when you decide to have compassion on criminals, that you are being cruel to those who are victims of those crimes. And that is why everybody is saying that the president is handling this with kid gloves now. And it might not be that the president intentionally wants to do that, but the fact is that the security architecture is not helping him in terms of people that have been victims of this crisis achieving justice.
All right, Mr. Olajigbe.
And when you don't see justice as clear instrument of redressing conflict, people begin to give diverse and different interpretation to such crises. I think what can be done in this particular conflict all over the country, one, the government should now accept the fact that you cannot resolve the problem within the present and current conflict of context of the problem. You must go back to history to resolve the crisis, and at the same time, you must know that this is one crisis, even though it's localized now in the central region of Nigeria. This is the crisis. This particular crisis has affected diverse fabrics of our society. So every Nigerian is involved in this crisis. Yeah. So you can no longer solve the crisis of the elders and the farmers within the narrow context of that of the profession.
All right, Mr. Olajigbe.
Religion has been affected by the crisis.
All right. May I?
Trust has broken down.
All right. May I come in here?
Trust.
All right. May I come in here? You talk about dispute resolution mechanism. How do you think that this can be strengthened to ensure that the problem that we have on ground is very well nipped in the bud?
Hello?
Yes, hello. I said you talked about dispute resolution mechanism, that we need to go back to history. How do you think that this can be done? And how do you think that the mechanisms can be strengthened to ensure that the problem that we have on ground at the moment is very well nipped in the bud?
The mechanisms can be strengthened to ensure that the problem that we have on ground at the moment is very well nipped in the bud.
Yeah, the first place to start is to accept that we have a national problem and not look at it from the prism of religion, from the prism of ethnicity. It's a national problem, it's a national crisis that we have. It doesn't matter individual opinion in this respect. And we must have a national dialogue that recognizes all the crises and conflicts that we are having in Nigeria. That's why, if, for example, you can now see when government has thrown down one solution, solution of ranching, you can see reaction from different parts of the country. That means that there's the conflict has been complicated. So there must be national dialogue. And following that national dialogue, there must be policy dialogue. We must address the true meaning of citizenship in Nigeria. Recognition of people as indigenous, as settlers, have not, in fact, have generated more crises than it has resolved over years. These are dimensions that must be brought into resolution of or management of this crisis that we have on ground now.
Okay.
So until we begin to define who is a citizen and who is not a citizen, we have advocated several years back that Nigeria must be driven by residence factors rather than indigenous and every other thing. Okay. And you cannot resolve this within the narrow, by narrowly addressing the conflict in the Middle Belt currently. You can do this within the context of the nation itself. The nation is killed. People don't see themselves as Nigerian, whether you are Yoruba, whether you are Hausa, whether you are Fulani. So we have a country already that has no citizens. That is the bedrock of this problem.
Okay.
And if we don't tackle that, it's going to be difficult for us to resolve not only elders farmers crisis, in quotes. Other crises in Nigeria will be difficult to resolve.
All right, Mr. Olajigbe, let me bring it.
Everything you do in Nigeria today is assuming diverse interpretation.
Let me bring it to the studio.
To ethnicity, to religion, and even now to political driving.
I think you just nailed it on the head, because I recall we had a guest a few days ago who actually said that there is a need for us to have some kind of national discourse and expunge that indigenship clause.
That's going back to the history.
In the days of Jonathan as president of Nigeria, we had a national dialogue. millions of naira was expended.
Did it address the question of who is a Nigerian and citizenship in this country?
Was the paper, the communique, or the whatever they did put together, was it made public? Somebody collected it and kept it somewhere and said he doesn't want to use it. So where do we go from there? Are we going to be applying the same medicine to the same ailment, the same way, and expect a different result? It doesn't work that way. As he said, we are inching our way towards a crisis, a national crisis. I hate to call it a civil war. I see a dimension in this herdsmen famous attack, so that perhaps some of the insurgents that were sent away from Boko Haram camp and operational bases are now working in tandem with the herdsmen. Because the carnage that happened on Sunday
defies all logic.
Was well planned and well coordinated.
I'm happy you even mentioned that. Let me quickly come in, because a few security experts like yourself have said the real problem is we've not been able to intercept the planning stages or planning process of this kind of heinous crimes. That if we're able to tackle it at that level, then we would not even have this reactionary, moves
detection. That's what they call detection, conflict detection. If you can detect conflict as it was being planned, of course you can arrest it, and then you can manage it, whereby it will not blow, it will not explode. But in this case, that's why I said if you remove the head of security organizations. Now, DSS, for instance, they have, and DMI, they have operatives around those areas. What were they doing? The other day, I declared that we definitely have fifth columnists among these organizations. People who are not loyal to Nigeria or to the federal government, but who are loyal to other authorities or forces or powers.
And this is fundamental.
Okay, and for that reason, when they get this information, they don't report. Because somebody should have reported the Plateau attack. It was massive. And I can tell you, for them to have killed so many in large number, they too must have come in large number.
All right, this is fundamentally.
How did they move from wherever they were to Rion and the other areas?
Yeah, if you grant me the latitude, this is fundamentally troubling. He talked about the ranches, which was one of the solutions put on the table, and as he said, the ranches, the solution proffered is
not acceptable.
It's not acceptable.
Can
and then you also talked about the national dialogue not being solution to this. So what then is a solution?
Now let me quickly tell you. What we had was that Metiala said they lost 300 cows. I am not a farmer in that sense, but I've seen people trying to manage a cow, either to slaughter or to move it into a vehicle or out of a vehicle. It takes some special skills to manipulate a cow. Now, these farmers are not experts in moving cows. And then the logistics of moving 300 cows is massive. Okay? That they will now move as many as 300 cows and into thin air. Cows are no pins. Let's get it clear.
All right, Mr. David.
Again, I'm going there. Again, we still also must understand that we cannot continue to rate or place a value on cows and equate that with human lives. That you kill my cow, I kill you people. It should never even have happened. It's evil.
Is it not a function of the level of their exposure?
I like him to address that question. What is the solution if national dialogue will not work, ranches will not work? See, what is the solution?
Let me tell you, ranching will not work insofar as people have seen from historical experience that when you accommodate herdsmen in your community, they will overtake your community, overrun you, and then you become slaves to them. There are so many in history. Let's not go into that. What I'm saying is, in other climes where there are herdsmen, there are modern methods of managing cattle herds or whatever. Why don't we copy those places? When people know that the coming of herdsmen to their community for ranching will spell doom for them, how do you think they will allow that? Ordinarily, because some states made laws like Plateau banning open grazing. You saw what has been their lot. How do you now say the same
Plateau
community?
State does not even have an anti-open grazing law. It is Benue State.
I'm just saying, I'm giving an example now that Benue made a law banning open grazing.
Yes.
Yet, mayhem was the result. How do you now think other states will now accommodate ranchers? Ranches in their community.
Let me
also tell you again that the antecedent of herdsmen and violence, they go hand in hand, and that element make them unwelcome in any community.
But that violent element has not always been there. Mr. Olajuigbe, in all of 36 states in this country, we've always had herdsmen here and there. I doubt if there's any state in this country that would say that herdsmen have not always been a feature. In places where you call Sabo, for example, you have a collection, a colony of, northerners, non-indigens, and they have always lived in peace. My question is there an external dimension to this crisis that we don't seem to understand and therefore we're not able to tackle?
We must recognize that time has equally changed. There is what you call climate change that is frustrating grazing in the northernmost part of the country. We must equally recognize the crisis of Boko Haram that has become a push factor even to these herders in their own, in quotes, traditional region. So we must recognize this. We must equally recognize that farming system has changed. We must recognize that the type of land that were available to Nigeria in the 50s, in the 60s, in the 70s, in the 80s and 90s are no longer available to them today. These are parts of contestation for resources. But let me come directly to the issue of ranching. Yes. Ranching is the right way to go. But the challenge with the ranching of the federal government, that the ranching solution of federal government is having, is that it's dropped. That solution is dropped at the height of crisis. In crisis management, you don't just, when people are aggrieved, when you have not redressed the immediate cause, when you have not addressed the immediate cause and redressed the immediate damage of a crisis, you don't drop solution. That is why the solution is being frustrated anywhere and everywhere now. So your solution must not only be adoptable, it must be adaptable to that specific environment in which you want the solution to work when you are dealing with crisis management. And that is the issue with the ranching of the federal government. Ordinarily, with the killings that are going on and every other thing, a lot of people need to be assuaged. They need to be convinced or reconvinced that they are citizens of Nigeria. And this can only be done on scale of justice. Meaning that criminals must be it doesn't matter whether you call them Yoruba, you call them Fulani, you call them Hausa, you call them Igbo. They must be punished and they must be recognized. The only tribe criminals have is that they are criminals. And the law has provided ways of dealing with crime. As long as you don't recognize that provision of the law, and you don't do justice to the state, justice to victim, and justice to those that are that are perpetrating the crisis, there will be no basis for any solution. Any solution that you drop will be frustrated by the environment.
Let's come back to you here in the studio. You have mentioned quite a number of dimensions, historical dimension, political dimension, and religious dimension. Do we also have a foreign dimension to it?
I was going to go there, that the conflict has been globalized. I was not told. I heard the president on television saying that Libyan refugees, Libyan terrorists were part of the people causing trouble around the, this herdsmen farmers thing. The Surgeon of Police, the Minister of Defense, I heard them also saying that foreigners have infiltrated, their gang. I also know that there are Fulanis who are not originally in Nigeria, but were invited to come and aid their fellow Fulani herdsmen. Okay? But you see, the problem in all of these things is when at the highest level, the president could declare that what is being done to forestall further influx of foreigners into our territory. When you look at it, you want to ask yourself, these people in Barakin Ladi, they've been living there with the Buron people, and they were not having it this bad. At what point did the crisis, begin?
Escalate.
And then you also want to ask yourself, yes, we talk of ratification and all of that, but should that now translate into mass murder of people? Okay? But because these are non-natives, so to say, they will not care in destroying people, properties, and whatever. Because the mass carnage is unheard of. There was no war, mere conflict or disagreement, and it has escalated to that level. Somebody somewhere is not doing his job. And I'm saying the people who are to guard our borders, they are equally guilty of complicity in all of these things. There's been so much inertia in all of this.
Okay,
recently, some 5 men were condemned to death for killing a herdsman. For all I care, every single life taken, its importance of value. We cannot create life. Therefore, we mustn't take life. No religion supports killing of people. Okay? What happened? 5 people were sentenced to death for killing a herdsman. How many herdsmen have been so sentenced for the mass murder of people from Nasarawa to Plateau and Benue, Taraba, and other states?
Everywhere. Very important point you
it's
just
a
raised
factor.
there.
Government has to now get its game together, and let's see the action. Across the length abroad of Nigeria, people are not happy and they are disillusioned. Now election is on the way. It's going to get a lot messier, and I'm afraid that here, as always, when we prepare for election,
people may resort to self-help.
Of course, here when we prepare for election, it's as if we are preparing for war. That is still ahead, and we are having so much.
While every other thing takes the back.
So if at this point in time we're having that kind of crisis, what happens when election comes a lot more closer? Where do we go from there?
Very good
Well,
question.
that's $1 million question.
$1 million dollar question indeed. Olajigbe, Gbenro, Olajigbe. Now, Mr. Oladende has said that there's a foreign dimension to this, speaking to the point I raised earlier as to whether there is more to this than meets the eye. What do you think about this possibility of a foreign input in this herdsman-farmers clashes?
Straight away, your solution to managing any conflict will be determined by the analysis of such conflict. Let me expressly state here that federal government has not done diligent analysis of this crisis. It has not understood it. Today, of course, we don't even know how many people are speaking on behalf of federal government. The president say his own, the minister of defense will say his own, and even the IG will say his own. These are challenges that are that have complicated this crisis. It has complicated it equally. We must understand that for you to resolve a crisis, you must, it's just like a doctor. To resolve an issue with particular sickness, you must have accurate diagnosis. But in Nigeria, the analysis is very faulty, so also why the solution is faulty. I think what I will advise now is that there must be clear understanding of this crisis. Not only clear understanding of the crisis, clear understanding of the pattern of abuse that this crisis is generating. And after that, government must evolve a model that will speak to various concentric sections of the crisis. For example, the pattern of abuse means that some people have been, they have been killed, some people have been widowed, you have widowers, you have orphans. What becomes of this segment of society? Government must provide solution to that, which here I call remediation of the damage that have been caused by the crisis. Secondly, government must equally dispense justice to those that are perpetrating the crisis, which I call the criminals.
Yes.
And even the violence drivers, including sponsors, as they have said. And then they can now move ahead to build the environment. Building environment means that they must address discordant development in the country. They must understand Nigeria is a country that is different, is now differently together. Attempt must be made for national integration or reintegration. And then citizenship must be defined. And herein I propose residency. Rather than issue of this, where you are resident for a specific number of years,
yes.
you must be you should be recognized as such, and you must have all the entitlements that belongs to those who claim that they are born in particular areas.
All right, Mr. Olajigbe.
So we must bring all this on board in finding solution to the problem.
All right,
the
Mr.
critical point of start for government
all right,
is to recognize that there is a problem and that they don't understand the problem.
all right, Mr. Olajigbe. All right, Mr. Olajigbe.
National dialogue.
Yeah, you talk about understanding. You talk about understanding what the problem is. You have talked about the pattern of abuse. As a security expert, what's your own understanding of the problem?
The best way to understand this crisis is to look at the national configuration. Not only what is coming out is that, one, I have just told us that the most substantial push of this crisis is economic. Contestation for resources. Why are you saying that? Why do you now say that, okay, people are resistant to ranching? It's because they feel that people are coming to take their land. And which is, in a way, it's an economic factor. So recognizing that economy, poverty, especially unjust poverty, and unjust wealth you have in this country, inequality at all levels in this country, they are the ones that are fueling crisis in this country.
All right.
Those are the factors that are fueling crisis in this country. And then they begin to mutate and assume the color of religion, assume the color of ethnicity. In the first place, why do you think people are falling back on their religion and ethnicity in Nigeria? It's because the state is no longer there for anybody. So people now withdraw and go back to their ethnicity to find succor, to find refuge.
Yeah.
They go back to their religion to find refuge.
Issue of security.
Yeah.
And then we begin to color every crisis in this manner.
Very,
So we
very
must
vital.
understand the true,
Very vital
the
points you have
bedrock
made.
of our problem.
Yes, Mr. Olajigbe,
Social injustice.
multi-dimensional problem that requires multi-dimensional solutions. But then, so far, every solution that government seems to be coming up with doesn't seem to be working, including the issue of setting up ranches. Mr. Ariyo, back to you. You as he was speaking there, you were saying there is that.
You see, the ownership thing is always there.
You know, he said something
it's
that
ancestral homeland.
He said something that we are differently together.
What are differently? Yes, that's a very powerful thing he said.
Very, very powerful.
That's
and he talked about the compensation aspect, remediation of this crisis.
Absolutely
explore those two before we
I'm absolutely for the remediation aspect. Fathers have been killed. People have lost their wives, children have lost their parents, because now it will be doubly difficult for them. So government has to step in, enumerate who and who is involved, and have a package that will alleviate the problems they will be confronting henceforth.
All right.
So that life can be meaningful. The second one, it is not a new thing that we have never been as divided as we are today, and this began shortly before the 2015 election. Unfortunately, no healing process was put in place, whereby we will go back to the one united nation that we were. Painfully, the World Cup tournament going on now, in a way, brought us together. The moment we lost that match,
everybody went
everything
back to,
fell apart. Again, we not only just falling apart into a mourning mood. I'm in black because I identify with the loss in Plateau. Loss of man. I would have been there. I would have been killed there too. Could have been anybody. And the question is, after Plateau, where next?
Where next? As a matter of fact, as we talk about Plateau, killings have happened in Adamawa already, and in Benue, where 2 soldiers have already been killed.
I've been wondered, and even soldiers were wounded.
Yes.
And they are said to be undergoing treatment somewhere.
President Buhari has been to Plateau. Senate President has been there.
We are used to that.
How much difference this would make?
Let them change the narrative. Let them do something new.
All right,
okay.
all right,
gentlemen.
Oladende Aria, you told me not to take away the Allah from
That's
me.
the power in the name.
Oladende Aria, security expert, thank you very much indeed. Coming to share your thoughts with us. And then Executive Director, Emergency Risk Alert, Benga Olajugbe in Abuja. We thank you, gentlemen, for this vibrant session. Thank you very much indeed.
Benro, that is. Yes, Benro Olajugbe. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Of course, like somebody said, unity, peace and progress, that's what's on the Nigerian coat of arms. Maybe it's time for us to add justice to it.